Have you ever looked at a painting and thought, is this guy trippin'? The answer is yeah, maybe, yeah. Welcome back to the Art Trippin lecture series. We are talking about the high Renaissance outside of Italy. Today we will be looking at The Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch, dated to about 1510-1515. I'm Dr. Megan Lorraine Debin, and I'm an art historian, and this is Art Trippin lecture series. Hi, I'm Dr. Megan Lorraine Debin, and this is Art Trippin. Fun fact, this YouTube channel, Art Trippin, actually takes its name in part from the first TikTok I ever made, which was about Hieronymus Bosch. And a lot of people, when they've looked closely at his artwork, say that some of these images are so surreal, so fantastical, that they almost look psychedelic, and they wonder if this guy was trippin'. I'll tell you more about that in a minute, but let's look more closely at this artwork. This artwork is an iconic example of high Renaissance art from the north of Europe. The painting is today housed in the Prado Museum in Spain. So if you ever get to Spain, you can go see this in person. It is a sight to see. This painting is a triptych, which means it's made on 3 connected panels, and those side doors open and close. And when you close the side doors, you can see an image painted on the exterior panels that appears to depict the 3rd day of biblical creation. So this is the day when the world has been created and plant life has been added, but before the appearance of animals and humans. And this is based on the sort of biblical idea from Genesis of creation. When you open up the panels, you see these 3 images. Let's look closely. In the first panel, reading from left to right, we can see what most scholars agree to be a depiction of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. You can see 2 nude figures, one male, one female. In the center, perhaps a depiction of Jesus or God, and around them, a beautiful, fantastical landscape with lots of interesting details of animals and plant life. Here we can see a beautiful, peaceful garden, and this would be sort of where Adam and Eve are living before original sin, before the fall of man. Now let's look at the largest panel, the central panel. In this image, again, the iconography is somewhat unusual and maybe confusing to some people, but most scholars generally agree that this is a depiction of sort of human life on Earth. And for Bosch himself, it's about his interpretation of life, society, and people around him. So what do we see happening in this image? If you zoom in close, you see lots of nude figures sort of gallivanting around in the landscape, sometimes engaging in strange behavior, such as carrying around giant strawberries, riding giant birds. But some people appear to be fighting or in distress. Some people appear to be engaging in sort of sexy time. Let's look at this couple here inside of this giant bubble that seems to be sitting on top of some kind of fruit, maybe a pomegranate, where a human head is peeking out and a little mouse is climbing in there. So we see all sorts of really strange, really fantastical imagery in Hieronymus Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights. Art historians frequently interpret the painting as a kind of didactic warning on the perils of life's temptations. However, the intricacy of its symbolism, and particularly that of the central panel, has led to a wide variety of scholarly interpretations over the centuries. This is the main interpretation, but there are other possible ways to interpret this artwork. There's a great quote from the American writer Peter S. Beagle, who says that this central panel in particular is an erotic derangement that turns us all into voyeurs, a place filled with the intoxicating air of perfect liberty. And perhaps this is Bosch's interpretation of life in early 16th century Northern Europe. The really interesting part of this painting is the third last panel. And if you look closely at this panel, you can see a really hellish looking landscape. Up at the top of the panel, in the background, we see what appears to be sort of a cityscape in the background, perhaps in flames. And in fact, if you look at a lot of Hieronymous Bosch's work, you see lots of depictions of fires. And apparently, the town that he was from had suffered a really dramatic fire, and he survived that fire, I think, as a young child. And so this probably traumatized him, because we see this as a kind of recurring image in some of his paintings. Now, if you zoom in closer and look at the central area of this panel, you see this kind of egg-shaped figure with up above near this egg-shaped figure a giant ear that's holding a huge knife. You see people being dragged around by giant animals. They appear to be being sort of tortured by all of these surreal creatures. If you look down into the foreground, you see a giant bird figure seated on a golden throne. And it's, one of those thrones. He appears to be excreting out of him this sort of bubble that has people trapped inside of it. And these people are falling into a vat where other people are vomiting into and defecating out coins into this giant vat. Nearby, we see a woman being accosted by a supernatural being that has arms like tree branches. And just above these figures, we see a lot of musical instruments being shoved into a variety of orifices of these people. We also see birds flying out of people's buttocks and all sorts of perhaps uncomfortable situations. We also see a pig dressed in a nun's habit accosting a man. And in another instance, if you zoom in closely, you can see some musical notes on the buttocks of this individual. And if you really want to nerd out, some nerd took the time to go through and figure out how to play those notes, and you can hear Bosch's butt song from hell. So when we look at this image, we see perhaps a very uncomfortable, very painful existence that awaits those in the afterlife who are not living sort of good Christian lives. And this is the general interpretation of the painting, that we see a depiction of a peaceful life before humans commit original sin. We see humans gallivanting around, engaging in all sorts of strange behavior that maybe Bosch considered sinful behavior, and all of this leads to a very terrible, hellish existence in the afterlife. So this is generally interpreted as a warning and a moralizing story to warn people to live well so they don't end up burning in hell in the afterlife. Now, the strange images in Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights have led a lot of people to wonder, is this guy trippin'? And in fact, the answer might be yes. There's one scholar, Lorinda Dixon, who writes about the possibility that Bosch was suffering from St. Anthony's fire. What is St. Anthony's fire? This is an illness that causes hallucinations, and specifically hallucinations of animals, fire, and flying imagery. And this illness is something that you can contract through eating bread that was made with moldy barley or molded wheat. St. Anthony's fire is also called ergot poisoning, and Lorinda Dixon says that we do know that there were historically outbreaks of this ergot poisoning in Northern Europe that would align with the general dates of the life of Hieronymus Bosch. So it could be that he was a little bit trippin'. And in fact, we see a lot of similar imagery in Bosch's painting. If you look at some of his other works, you see a lot of this imagery of depictions of lustful human existence and depictions of flames and fire and torture and really hellish imagery. So this is something that we see as a recurring theme in Bosch's work and might speak a little bit to his personal beliefs about sort of the state of the society that he lived in. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe and stay tuned for more Art Trippin'.